Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to work on the ocean lace pendant. So this pendant uses a really beautiful, very large focal bead. And this bead was from the Beading School Academy box called Coral Garden. However, I'm going to show you in the video how you can adjust for any size focal bead, because you may not have this bead. So I want you all to be able to learn how to bezel a focal bead in case you happen to have some and you've been wondering about it. Now I do have a video on my channel on bezeling a focal bead, but it's a smaller one and it's more like odd shaped, but this is an oval focal bead. This guy is reversible. Because it is a focal bead, it's going to have, it's a bead, so it's the same on the back as it is on the front, or whichever side you want to be the front. We have this little bail that we're going to make, but this is going to be a separate video because I think this bail can be used for a lot of things. So I don't want to specifically keep it just for this video because I want you to be able to make other things with the bail, because this bail could make a great beaded bead, it could make a necklace, all kinds of things. So here we go. So we're going to clear this off. We'll get a materials list going and we'll get started. It is a 32 by 22 millimeter oval focal bead. So it is not a flat back. It is an oval bead. It has holes in it, which I didn't use. So this is the one we're going to work on. But let's say you don't have this one. I'm going to show you how you can figure out how to find your base ring. And that's the most important thing. We want to find this base ring for our peyote bezel, right? So each one of these can be found so easily. It doesn't matter what size it is, with a little adjustment, depending on how thick your stone is. And, I'll kind of get into that as we do this bezel, but this is the one we're going to work on today. But if you don't have it, just grab any focal bead that you have and you can apply the same principles. So I'm going to give you lots of little tips and tricks along the way so that you are successful in bezeling a focal bead. First thing you want to do is thread your needle with about 6 feet of thread, put on a stop bead around the middle. So we're going to do that embellishment that I showed you in the beginning, so that's why we need extra thread. If you're just playing, you could probably do, about 4 feet just to get your bezel started. So no matter what size stone you're using, you want to put a number of Delicas on your thread, drop them down to your stop bead, and you want that to fit around your stone. So I'm just going to just bring them. So here I have a number of beads on. I know I have 70 on because I know I already measured it and I know 70 fit. But let's say you're using a stone that, that's a different size. You just want to put your stone in like so. And I see how I'm pushing my stone down on my mat because I want those beads to fit in around the largest part of the stone. See that? So it's sort of in the middle here. It's not here and it's not low down. It's not tight. So this 70 fits this stone. This is the 32 by 22 millimeter. Fits it just about perfectly. I have just a teeny bit of play, but when I pull it's like this is a perfect fit. So you want whatever size you're using, you want to make sure this is the type of fit that you have. And don't forget to push your stone down so that these beads come to the outermost edge, like the widest part of the stone. So just like so. Okay, so I have my Delicas on. I'm going to sew them into a circle by sewing through the first bead after my stop bead. And I'm going to do something I don't normally do when I do a bezel, is I'm going to reinforce by going all the way around again and just exit any Delica. So just come around again. Okay, so I've sewn around to reinforce, and you're just really going to exit any Delica. And I'm just going to put my stone in and see how we're doing. So see how when you do that second round, especially when you're using such a big bezel, so many beads, kind of straightens them out a little bit. So this is what it looks like. It's looking pretty perfect so far. Now I'm just going to start my peyote bezel. So I'm going to pick up my Delica. I'm exiting, pull on a little bit. I'm exiting a Delica, I'm going to skip a Delica, and I'm going to sew through the next one. And that's going to pop that bead on top of the previous one, just like that. I'm going to pick up a Delica, exiting this one, I'm going to skip the next one and sew through the following one. Just like that. And you want to make sure that's going to pop up on the previous bead, just like that. So we're going to do this all the way around. As we go around, I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to keep it, keep your bezel even. So, this has got a lot of beads and you don't want them all buckled up. You want to keep your tension even. So I find if I put them on these 2 fingers like that, so I put it on my 2 fingers. So I'm exiting here, picking up a Delica, skipping a Delica, and sewing through the next one. So I'm giving it a little bit of tension with those 2 fingers just to hold everything in line and make sure it doesn't twist, because the larger the ring, the more it's likely to twist. So I'm just going to just keep adding my Delicas. Just like that. And do that all the way around. And keep your tension rather loose. You don't want anybody buckling, any beads buckling. You just want to keep them nice, like all in a row, and give it a little stretch if you find it's getting a little too tight. So just like that. So do that all the way around and then we'll step up. Okay, I've come all the way around and it's time to step up. So I'm picking up my Delica, exiting this one. I'm going to skip this one and sew through this next one and then the one on the diagonal. Don't sew your finger. Like that. It's just going to step me up so I can put some more beads on. So let's just put our stone on top of this. Nothing's going to stay, of course, yet, just to see how we're doing fit-wise. And I think that's looking pretty good. See that? It's not super tight. It's a little, it can move back and forth. You want that. You need a little bit of play. So that's looking very good. When I press it down, all the beads are secure and, they're fitting around there nicely. The fit is very important. If all of a sudden it's tight and it's coming up like this, you're going to have to, start again. And that's a lot of the process when you're bezeling an odd-shaped stone or a bead is you might get to a certain point and then it doesn't fit. So you'll have to, it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of trial and error. Okay, so what we're going to do now, so I'm exiting a Delica. I'm just going to add another round of Delicas. So I'm just going to pick up a Delica, exiting this one. I'm going to sew through the next one. Call that the up bead or sticking out bead. We're just going to do that all the way around. Like that. So keep going all the way around and then we'll step up. Okay, let's do our step up. So I'm exiting here. I picked up my Delica. I'm going to sew through this Delica, so that would be the next up bead, and then the one on the diagonal. So just like that. And this is what we have. Okay, let's do a little fit check. So I'm going to put my stone in, and so far I'm looking really good. When my bezel is fitting around very nicely. It's not tight. I can just pull it on and off. This is just what you want. You want to make sure that it's not, being too tight is the worst. So just like this, and when I hold it on the side, you see how that's coming so far? So we're looking good. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add one more round of Delicas. So just do it again. Exiting here, picking up a Delica, sewing through the next, sticking out Delica. Just like so. So you're going to do that, of course, all the way around, and then we'll step up. Okay, time to step up. So picking up my Delica, exiting this one, I'm going to sew through this one and then the one on the diagonal, just like so. And this is what I have so far. Let's do a fit check. So I'm going to pop my stone in, and it's starting to fit a little more snugly. It's still, movable. And you want to look at the sides. Is it covering the edge of your stone? And this is pretty good. I think that is just the way I want it. If it was here, I would add another round on. not for the pattern that we're doing, because we need to keep it consistent for the, for this particular pattern. But let's say just in general, if you're low, you want to add another round on. If you're too high, you might have to take one of your rounds off. But I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, so we are done with the Delica portion of the bezel. So the Delicas are kind of like the walls of the bezel. And then we're going to add 15-0s, which are going to be the edges that pull everything in. Let's pop the stone in. We'll check our fit. And that's looking very good. This is what I have so far. The edges look good. I'm just going to hold my stone in there, and I'm going to add some 15-0s. So we're going to add, just checking my, okay. So I'm going to add this peach color, 15-0, and I'm going to hold it while I do it so I can give it a, feel how the tension is. So I'm just going to put a 15-0. It's not going to, the bezel's going to flop around a bit, but it'll just give me an idea of how much to pull in. Okay, so I'm going to put a 15-0 in between each Delica, like so, holding it, pulling in a little bit. Like that. So you're just going to keep doing this all the way around, and then we'll step up and we'll put another round on. So go ahead and get that done. And you can pull in a little bit as you go along, and then we'll continue. As you're doing this, this is going to move around. You want to make sure you keep it snug up against the edge, right? You want to keep that right in place around the edge. So if it starts to move, you want to just make sure you push it back and just hold it. And make sure it doesn't move up like this on either end. You want to make sure that's nice and sort of even all the way around. Okay, we're going to step up. So we're exiting this Delica. I'm going to pick up my 15-0. I'm going to sew through this Delica and then the one on the diagonal. So just like that. And it's, it's not going to stay, but we're just going to hold it and give it a little pull like that. This is what we have so far. I notice that I have a little, I think I have a little yellow bead right there, but you know what, I'm going to leave it because I don't want to take the whole thing out. So I'm going to turn on to the other side right now and take off my stop bead and thread my needle, because I want to get around to 15-0s on this side so we can sort of stabilize this. So you'll be exiting, should be exiting one of the up beads right here. If you're in one, just sew on the diagonal until you're on the outside so you can add some beads on. So on this side, I think I'm going to add, looking at my pattern, I did the yellow bead here. So I'm going to pick up my 15-0, exiting here, I'm going to sew through the next one. I'm just going to do that all the way around, just picking up my 15-0, sticking through the next, sewing through the next sticking out bead or up bead, and I'm pulling, I'm just setting it in a bit. Do you see how I'm just going like this slightly? Just so it goes in the right direction. So go ahead and do that all the way around. Okay, let's step up. So picking up my last bead, exiting this Delica, I'm going to sew through this one and then the 15-0 on the diagonal. And I'm going to take a look. It's not going to stay yet. So here we have a round each of 15-0s on both sides. Okay, so now we're going to do another round of 15-0s, and we'll just keep doing it on this side, and then we'll go to the other side and do our second round. So I'm going to put on the metallic, sort of pinkish or blush. I'm going to sew through the next sticking out bead, which is that 15-0. Just going to do that. I'm holding it, and you want to pull in. So I'm holding it pretty snugly. with my, in this hand. So just like that. So do that all the way around, and then we'll continue. Time to step up. So picking up my metallic, exiting this yellow one, I'm going to sew through this one, yellow one, and the one on the diagonal. And that's going to end this round. So just like, whoops, just like so. This is what I have so far. So I'm going to flip to the other side and put another round on this side. So I did take out that, I took everything out and took the yellow bead out. It was just bugging me. So at this point, we're going to add the metallic. I just have to look at my notes. The metallic bead. So I'm exiting this one. I'm going to pick up this 15-0 and just sew through the next, sticking out 15-0, pulling inward. I'm going to pull it nice and snugly inward so that we're going to really hug the stone. We're just going to do this all the way around. So just a note, as I'm going around, I'm holding my stone, and when I put my beads on, I'm pulling inward, but when I pull inward, I'm holding this finger on the back so they don't pull it off the stone, away from the stone. So holding this, pulling this, and it's going to sort of keep it nice and even. Okay, time to step up. Picking up my 15-0, exiting here. I'm going to sew through this 15-0 and then the one on the diagonal. Although I'm holding the back, as I pull this way, I'm holding the back tight. This is what we have so far. Okay, let's add another round to this side. So we're gonna, and we stay in pattern, we're gonna add the metallic here. So exiting here, I'm just gonna sew through the next bead, which is that 15-0. And I'm gonna use the same sort of principles that I used when I was putting, every time I put a round on. I'm going to hold the stone. When I pull in, I'm going to hold the back so I don't pull it out of shape. I'm going to make sure I pull inward a little bit. And then I'm just going to go around and add the rest of these 15-0s. So do a couple more rounds on each side, and then we'll be done with the bezel. All right, so go ahead and get that done, and we'll step up. Okay, time to step up. So picking up my last 15-0, exiting here, I'm going to sew through, whoops, exiting right here, I'm going to sew through this 15-0 and then the one on the diagonal, holding it, giving that a pull, holding the back with my finger. And this is what we have so far. And we're almost there. So let's turn it around and do a round on this side. And this is working out really well. It's keeping everything nice and even. Look how pretty that is. So I think I'm gonna do, if I do the pattern, I'm gonna do that peachy colored one next. So exiting here, just put a peach bead on. So through the next one. I'm holding, again, I'm holding the back. So it's nice and secure. I'm not pulling it out of shape, but I'm pulling inward a little bit. Oh, just like that. So I'll just let you go ahead and do that all the way around. Right, let's step up. So exiting here, picking up my 15-0, I'm going to sew through this 15-0 and then the one on the diagonal. Just like that. So this is what we have so far. Going to the other side now. We have 2 more rounds to put on, one on each side. Okay, let's do our last round on this side. So here we just finished this one. We'll get back to that. We'll do this one. So in the pattern, I used the yellow bead as my last round. I did notice, because I had done this once before, that it was a little tight, like getting some of the beads in where the curved part is. We'll try it again. I'm going to use, I'll try to pick like the skinniest 15-0s that are there, because they do vary in size. But if if you're finding that it's buckling a little bit or it's not fitting, you can always use one of those little Preciosa Charlotte beads. And here I'll show you the difference between a Charlotte and a 15-0. So you see that? It's quite a bit smaller. It's hard to tell, but it is smaller than the regular 15-0. So if you have Charlottes, they're always like a good option if you need a really small bead to fit in a small space. But we'll try the yellow ones first. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my yellow 15-0, exiting here. I'm going to sew through the next one. I'm still using that same principle of holding the back while I put the front beads on. Like so. So we're just going to do this all the way around, and if I find that my beads are buckling a little bit or not fitting in there, I'll come back. If not, I'll just go all the way around and meet you at the end. Last 15-0, I'm going to step up, so exiting here, I'm going to sew through this one and the one on the diagonal. And so what do you think? I think it did fine. They're clearly like seem a little bit bigger, and the shape is a little bit different than the metallic ones. These are more rounded. And it's a Miyuki, so maybe it's because it's the matte, but I think it worked. So I'm really not bunched up anywhere, and I think it looks pretty good. But you know, if that happens to you, you can always use a Charlotte. So I'm going to sew this thread in, and then we're going to go on the back, and we're going to put one more round on the back. So just to sew in, you just want to. So exiting here, I'm just going to sew on the diagonal through the beads until I get to the Delicas. This 15-0. And then here, I've just come to a Delica right here. And we can do another one on the diagonal like so. And then, so I'm exiting right here. I'm going to reverse direction and go up this one. Like so. And then I'm going to go back down this one again, and that's going to lock that bead in place. And just go one more on the diagonal, and then you could clip off that thread. So that looks pretty good. All right, so let's do one more round on the other side. So I've turned it around, last round, and I used the metallic on this round. So exiting this peachy one, just going to pick up the metallic and sew through the next sticking out bead, and I'm just going to do that all the way around until this side is done. And the same thing on this side. If you find anything is bunching up or the bead isn't fitting quite right, you can always put a Charlotte here. But I swear these are just like slightly different shape Miyuki, because these little 15-0s here are very rounded, where those yellow ones seemed a little more, almost a little more square, almost a little more like a Toho, but it's a Miyuki. So I don't know, maybe, like I said, maybe it's just the matte that made the difference. All right, so I'm just going to do this all the way around, then I'll step up, and then we'll be done with the bezel part. Okay, so I put that last round on and I stepped up, and you know, I think we really were right on the line whether or not to use that smaller Charlotte. I think it could have easily used it, but I think, you know, I wanted to keep it in pattern, so, you know, in the color that I was using and the beads. So here we go. I think it looks really pretty. So we're done with the actual bezel. Now you're just going to sew this thread in like we did on the other side, and then we will start the embellishment around this really pretty bead. We're going to start the embellishment. So first I'm going to try to sort of get this even, my start. We're going to do stitch in the ditch. So I'm just going to kind of cut my star in half, put my needle there. So here I've got the metallic 15-0, the pink one, and then this Delica right here. And if you notice, we have, when we look at this, there are two Delicas here, 3 here, 2 here, 3 here. So we want the first stitch in the ditch to end up in between 2 of them. So to do that, so here's my center, I'm just going to move back to this middle one of the group of 3, and then when I put my bead on, it will go, I'll sew through the next one there, and the bead will go right here. So you're going to start about here. Okay, so you're going, back a little bit. So I hope that makes sense. Remember, get the center. You should have 2 beads, and go back to the middle bead of this group of 3. That's what we're going to use to put the stitch in the ditch on. Okay, so this is where we are so far. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my first stitch in this ditch bead, which is an 11-0. So remember, I'm exiting that middle bead of that group of 3, so I can place the bead right here, and it will be centered. So I'm just going to sew through the next middle bead of the group of 3 Delicas. And when I pull, put that into place, that should sort of give me, let me just get that tight. That should just about come into the center. So you see how that worked out? So make sure yours ends up with that first stitch in the ditch bead, pretty much centered, because we're going to use the one on this side and the one on this side to attach our bail. So I was just trying to get it, done so that, centered, so that when you do put the bail on, it'll be easy. So make sure that bead is right there. Let's add another one. So 11-0. I'm exiting right here. So I'm just going to sew through the next middle bead of the next 3 Delicas that are sort of, in a row here. That puts my next one on. So this is what we're going to do all the way around. So exiting here, I'm going to sew through this one. Like that. And this is what it looks like. So we're going to go in this direction. When we come around, everything will be, there'll be 3 beads up here that we can use for our, for the bail. All right, so keep doing your stitch in the ditch all the way around, and then we'll continue. Okay, last stitch in the ditch bead. So I put this one on, like so. Then I'm just going to add my last one, so it's going to go through this one. That's like where the first one came out. So just like so. And now I am all surrounded with these 11-0s, and we can continue the embellishment. Okay, so we have all our stitch in the ditch beads on, and I want you to sew that thread in. Now we have a nice long thread. You'll use the rest of it, but just for ease of placement, rather than sewing through a lot of beads, let's just clip off that. Just sew through a few beads, Delicas on the back, and then clip that thread off, and you still have your needle and thread. So I still have, like 3 feet of thread on my needle, so I can use that to do the next round. Okay, so we're going to start the next round, and it's an even repeat all the way around. So and we'll talk about that in a second. But so I put my needle through the 3 beads where I'm going to attach my bail, and so here are the 3. I'm going to go back 1 and sew through this bead, and that's where we're going to start. Okay, so I'm going to work over 5 beads. That's going to be my repeat. So see the 5 right there? So I'm going to do that as my repeat, and then I'm going to skip to the next 5 beads and do a repeat. And I'll do that 7 times, because I have 35 beads of my stitch in the ditch, and 7 times 5, the repeat over 5 is 35. So I know that my repeat will fit evenly all the way around the stone. So whatever size your stone is, and however many of your stitch in the ditch you have, you will find the factor of that number. So if you have, let's say you have 25, 5 will go into 25. So you'll be able to do a 5 bead repeat. So you just have to find the factor of the factors of the number of the beads that you're going around in order to get an even count for your embellishment. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so remember we did, here are the three. I know I keep repeating myself, but I just want to make sure everybody gets it. So here are the three bail beads, and I've come through this one, right? So I'm going to pick up 5 15-ohs, and I'm using that metallic, and I'm going to look for bead number 3 of my 5. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 I'll be working over. So bead 3 here, I'm going to go down and I'm going to sew through this 15-oh right there. So let me pull in really close for that. See that? And that kind of is going to put this, like this little slant of beads on in the center so I can come to the other side. So here, I'll show you what I mean. So I'm just going to pull those through. You see, so I have 5 beads on. I'm going to pick up 5 more of my 15-ohs. And I'm going to sew through bead number 5 of my repeat. So this is bead 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So now when I look at this, do you see how that first V is right in the center? Or it's pretty, you know, it's just right there in the center. And then I have my 3 beads here that are showing that are going to be for my bail. So we're just going to continue in this manner. So here we have that first little V on. Now I'm going to pick up a Delica and I'm going to sew through the next stitch in the ditch bead right there. And then I'm going to pick up 5 of my 15-ohs. And I'm going to, here's my repeat here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to look for bead number 3, and then I'm going to sew right here. I'm going to sew through this little 15-oh. That's sort of under it, like that. And that's going to place my next part of my V on. See that? And then I'm going to pick up 5 of my 15-ohs. And I'm going to sew through bead number 5. So here's bead number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now I have my next little embellishment on. I'm going to pick up my Delica and I'm going to sew through the next 11-oh. And then I'm just going to repeat that. I'm going to repeat that all the way around, and that's going to evenly put on my little embellishment here. Okay, last group of 5. I'm going to sew through the 5th bead. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like so. And then put on the Delica and sew through this 11-oh right here. And this is what we have so far. I think it's looking really good. So we're going to continue, not much more, but we'll get a little bit more done. We'll do some on the other side. Okay, so we're done on this side. So, and we're exiting this 11-oh right here. Just going to turn it to the other side. So here's where we're exiting, right here. I'm going to pick up my 5 15-ohs, and I'm going to look for bead number 3 here, and I'm going to sew through You know, 3 of the 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just gonna do that same thing. So through those 5 15 those that little 15 so 5 15 and pick up another 5 15 and I'm going to sew through bead number 5. So 1 2 3 4. So we'll just go right through bead number 5, the delicate, and then the next 11. I think I did 4 beads there, so let me pull that out and put one more. There we go. So putting on my 5 15-ohs, sewing through bead number 5. So this is 11-oh Delica and then the 11-oh. There we go. So that's how we're gonna start this side, and you're just gonna repeat that all the way around like we did on the other side. So 5 15-ohs, exiting here. I'm gonna look for bead number 3, and then I'm gonna sew through the little 15-oh here. That's sort of under bead number 3. Then I'm going to pick up 5 15-ohs, and I'm going to sew through. So we're just doing bead number 5 and then the Delica and the next 11-oh. So just these 3, like that. Okay, you're going to do that all the way around. Okay, last 5 15-ohs on this side. So here I have this one here. I came through the little peachy 15-oh. So I'm going to have my 5. I'm going to sew through this 11-oh, Delica 11-oh. Now we've completed this side, but we're going to do one more round. Okay, so this is what we have all the way around. Now we're just going to add some 15-ohs. So here, this is where we ended, right here. I'm just going to hold it this way so I can just sew in this direction. So I'm going to add 15-ohs here. So I'm exiting this 11-oh. I'm going to add a 15-oh here through the next 11-oh. Again, through the next 11-oh, 15-oh, through the next 11-oh, one more, 15-oh, through the 11-oh, Delica 11-oh. So that's 4 15-ohs in between. So you're just going to do that all the way around. 1, 2, 3. Don't forget number 4, right before that 11-oh. So this last 15-oh through the 11-oh, Delica 11-oh, 11-oh. Sorry, I lost my voice there for a second. Okay, so this is what we're going to see that? This is what we're going to do all the way around. Okay, last 15-oh through the 11-oh, Delica 11-oh. And now we're done. That's what it looks like. There you go. So you can go ahead and sew that thread in. Okay, so I have my bail and I have my bezel. And remember, we are going to sew through these 3 11-ohs, 1, 2, 3, you know, with the 15-ohs in between. So if you are using thread from your bezel or not, just thread a needle and come, you know, with, I don't know, 1.5 of thread, put on stop bead, leave a tail to sew in, sew through the 11-oh, 15-oh, 11-oh, 15-oh, and 11-oh at the top there. Now I'm just going to attach it to the bail. I'm going to take a 15-oh and I'm going to sew through any line of 11-oh, 3mm round 11-oh, like so. Then I'm going to take a 15-0 and I'm going to sew right back through the beads I started with, like so. And that's going to attach the bail on the other side, and I'm just going to do a little attachment here. So I'm exiting here, and here's that 15-0 I put on. Let's just sew through that 15-0, and then the 11-0, the 3mm and the 11-0, and then back through the 15-0. I'm going to pull this really tight now, and then through these beads again up at the top, give it a pull, and there you have it. Your bail is attached. You can go through this 2 or 3 times, but I think once you sew it in, it's going to be pretty stable. So here you go. So sew your, sew around a few times and sew your thread in, and then we'll take a look at our pendant. Okay, so here's our little pendant, and it's really not so little, is it? But it's really, really pretty, I think. I love that it's reversible. I love that you can add to this. So you have all these sections that you can put bicones, cup beads, flower beads, you name it. You can really any embellishment that you like. Once you learn how to do your basic bezel of a focal bead. So I hope you found this video informative. If you did, please like and subscribe and ring the bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. And please feel free to share this video. So take care. See you next time.